You're listening to the Super League Pod, coming up on episode 106 of your favourite Rugby League podcast. I've got all your feedback and shout-outs, news from around the world of Rugby League. I'll be bringing you back a review of the Challenge Cup quarterfinals, as well as previewing round 20 of Super League action. This is Super League Pod Live. Okay, hello and good evening everyone. Welcome to Super League Pod Live. You'll notice that I'm conspicuous in my presence and Mark is conspicuous in his absence. Those of you who were listening last week will know that he's away on holiday. So to break things down for you, we've got 15 minutes of free Spreaker audio time to get through an entire podcast, which if nothing else is going to draw into sharp focus just how little I actually contribute to a weekly episode of the Super League Pod. So we're going to launch straight into things and go into the feedback and shout-out section of the show. So you might recall last week Mark and I were rowing over which one of us is more hipster. Wally Frogmore got in touch and he says Mark and Tom arguing over who is more hipster. Por qué no le dos? Which I think means why not both of you. And P.S. Wally also double dares Mark to do a top knot. So I'm not sure if Mark's listening, but I'll be making sure that he hears about this the next time out. On the subject of being hipster, Cutthroat Jake also got in touch. He said that only a hipster would deny being a hipster and that my beard sounds merely metrosexual and not in fact hipster. So I'm not entirely sure which of those two labels I think I'd be more keen on, but cheers for getting in touch there, Cutthroat Jake. He also goes on to add on the subject of NRL reserve grade players coming and making it big in the English game, having previously played in England. He notes that Jamie Peacock spent some time in the NRL reserves before hitting it big in the Super League with Bradford. Away from whether or not Mark and I are hipsters, Dave Cantrell got in touch. He says, Tom Crook, you bastard. I laughed so hard at the Super League astrology that I snorted tea through my nose. And Jake adds on again that it's a great podcast and he loved the astrological tipping, but that he didn't need to know that Mark's anus was rising. That's something I'm sure we could all do without knowing about. Willows Road got in touch and he said, just completed a 5-hour podcast marathon today, listening to Super League Pod and Rugby League on Radio Yorkshire. Give them a listen to great shows. Nice one, Willows. A bit of an amalgamated one from Chris Macy, who got in touch and said, great show as always. Was going to mention last week that I checked out Do Pig on my Spotify. Rather like them, especially the track Rockweiler. Reminds me of an Aussie band I like called The Living End. Well worth a listen in my opinion. Also, so you know, for future reference, the Invicta Panthers are based in Maidstone in jolly old Kent. Best of luck doing the live cast next week. Thank you, Chris. And the final one, we'll give a bit of an Ask SLP shout out to Cole Render, who got in touch and said, after the brief Love Island chat, which Super League player, or maybe not, should appear on the show? Now, when I was prepping this, I first thought that it would be a good idea to get either the Carneys of this world or someone along that, or maybe Brett Ferris on, but actually those boys are getting quite a bit of love at the minute, so maybe we should get some of the young bucks from the Leeds Rhinos, maybe Jordan Lilly getting himself involved on Love Island wouldn't be such a bad thing. So, that's your truncated feedback taken care of. Let's take a look now at news from around the world of Rugby League. Okay, so the benefit of being able to do this on a Tuesday means that I've actually picked up on one of the breaking stories from yesterday, and that's that the RFL have confirmed that referee Richard Silverwood is currently suspended due to an internal investigation. 39-year-old Silverwood has not officiated since the Magic Weekend last month, with an RFL spokesperson confirming that he is currently unavailable. I can confirm that Richard Silverwood is suspended pending the outcome of an internal investigation, this spokesperson said. Silverwood first officiated in the Super League at the age of 24 in 2001, and also took charge of the 2013 World Cup final. His suspension is not the first of the 39-year-old's career, having been dropped following an off-field incident at a match between Huddersfield and Leeds in 2011, 2 years after he was suspended for what the RFL described as an alleged breach of its information technology policy. It's also been confirmed that Sam Ansell has been suspended after he joined the RFL's growing number of full-time referees in January. And breaking news alongside that today, it was announced this evening on Facebook and Twitter that Richard Silverwood has stepped down from his role as head coach of the Murfield Stags. England and Leeds fullback Zach Hardacre has joined NRL side Penrith Panthers with immediate effect in a swap deal for hooker James Seguiero. The deal is for the remainder of the current season with a view to a long-term extension for both players. Hardacre, who's 24, scored 67 tries in 155 games for Leeds and was named Man of Steel in 2015, but he requested a move to the NRL earlier in June. Seguiero is 25 and has played only 4 times this season, but the Papuan-born player was the Dally M Hooker of the Year in 2014, having scored 10 tries in 25 games for the Panthers. Head coach Brian McDermott said, "Zach goes with our best wishes and I'm pleased for him. He's been able to fulfil his ambition of playing in the NRL. When Zach came to us to request a move, it was always going to be important that we were able to strengthen our group. James Seguiero has a great opportunity to come to Leeds Rhinos and we are able to bring in a highly rated player." Speaking of highly rated players coming in, New Zealand forward Frank Paul Nuwusala has joined the New Zealand Warriors from NRL side the Canberra Raiders immediately on a 3.5-year deal. However, the Super League club are in the process of applying for a visa and they say that they anticipate his arrival in the UK in a few weeks' time. So keep your eyes on that one. Catalan Dragons have re-signed forward Ben Garcia from the Penrith Panthers on a 2.5-year deal. The 23-year-old made 46 Super League appearances for the Dragons, scoring 10 tries before returning to Australia earlier this season, where despite signing a 2-year contract with the Panthers, Garcia failed to break into the first team. Hull KR forward James Donaldson has signed a new 1-year deal to stay at the club until 2017 with an option to extend the contract by a further year. Donaldson is 24 and has scored only 1 try in his 37 appearances for Hull KR since joining from Bradford Bulls in 2014. He's a consistent performer and a real professional who works hard to improve his game, Rovers Director of Rugby Jamie Peacock said, and at the age of 24 he has his best years ahead of him. Hunslet prop Nathan Darby has been banned from all sport until 2020 after a failed drugs test. The former Featherstone player was suspended after testing positive for 3 anabolic steroids during an out-of-competition test in January this year. The 21-year-old had joined League One side Hunslet Hawks in 2015 after a trial and signed a new 1-year deal in October. In May, UK anti-doping chief Nicole Sapstead spoke of a worrying trend of young rugby players using steroids, and it's certainly not the first time we've reported this on the Super League pod. And finally, Ronan Costello's family have revealed that 5 other people have received organs donated by the young Huddersfield player after his recent death. The 17-year-old was critically injured in a recent game against the Salford Red Devils. The family of Ronan Costello released the following statement via the Giants website and Twitter feed. In accordance with Ronan's wishes, his family made the heartfelt decision to donate some of his organs. Ronan was a loving and caring lad who was dedicated to his family and friends. Ronan's family are committed that he has gone on to help are comforted that he has gone on to help 5 other people live their lives and survive, showing a final act of generosity. So that's the news from around the world of rugby league taken care of. Let's take a look back now at the quarterfinals of the Challenge Cup. Okay, so Challenge Cup quarter-final weekend meant there was no regular Super League play. So on Thursday night, we start with... Forgive me, I've gone a page too early. On Thursday night, we start with Huddersfield taking on Wakefield Trinity Wildcats down at the JJB. Trin got back to form with this convincing Thursday night win over a lacklustre Giants side in Huddersfield. A brace of tries for David Fifita, plus scores from Ben Jones-Bishop. Tom Johnston got Trin to 28 points, whilst hapless Huddersfield could only manage 16 with scores from Grix, Jake Connor and Jermaine McGilvray. Little bits and pieces of controversy in this one and a couple of decisions that could have gone either way. But for me, one of the things that had a big impact on the game going forward was the early sin binning of Danny Brough. We all know how important he is to the way Huddersfield play, and as I said before, when he's been sin binned, he owes it to the rest of that side to be on the field as much as possible in order to help guide them around. But it was good for Trinity to get through to the semi-finals, and also even more exciting, I imagine, for them to see enormous Samoan prop Fifita grabbing a couple of tries as well, making up for his sin binning against Leeds the week before. On Friday night, Warrington took on Widnes down at the Halliwell Jones, and Widnes let another team off the hook, having led 12-10 at half-time in this derby quarter-final. It was probably the case, however, that the savvier pair of half-backs did the job for Wire. Kevin Brown fluffed his lines on a couple of occasions, whereas Kurt Gidley's NRL experience and rugby brain were on show for all to see. So that means Warrington go through to the semi-finals alongside Wakefield. On The other side of the Pennines, however, it was Hull FC taking on Catalan Dragons on Saturday lunchtime. This was probably one of the more workaday of the quarterfinals, and Catalan never really got out of first gear. It was 22 points to 8 in favour of the Arley Birds, and ultimately it was a comfortable win for Hull. I don't take the pitch as an excuse, despite what Lauren Fraser-New said. Ben Garcia marked his return to Super League play, or British Rugby League, I should say, with a try, but it was steadily downhill from there for the visiting French side. Tries from Michaels, Pritchard and Houghton, and also 5 out of 5 kicking from Mark Sneed did for Hull, as the Dragons could only muster a further score through Fuad Yahar late in the piece. Hull progressed to the semi-finals and retain hopes of a possible treble, whilst the Dragons will now look to consolidate their place at the top end of Super League ahead of the Eights in a few weeks' time. So the final quarter-final saw Wigan take on the Catalan Dragons on Saturday evening down at the DW. Wigan had broken the back of this one by about half-time, with scores from Sargent and Sam Tompkins and a brace from Charnley, meaning that the Warriors were 22 points to 0 up at the break, and to be honest, they never really looked like capitulating that lead. Cass got one back through Luke Gale before Manfredi was awarded one of the most ridiculous video referee decisions I've ever seen. Ben Crooks' try on 80 minutes was probably the pick of the tries in many ways, but Cass simply didn't get out of first gear on this one, and Wigan were able to exploit that. So all of that means that the semi-final lineup for the Challenge Cup is complete. We'll see Wigan taking on Hull FC in Doncaster, and Warrington will face Trin at the Lee Sports Village, with those fixtures to be played over the 29th and the 30th of July. So that's the Challenge Cup covered. Let's take a look now at some results from elsewhere in the world of rugby league. Okay, so into League One then, it was Sheffield 35, Featherstone Rovers 10, Workington and Swinton Lions drew 10 all, the Oldham Ruffians got a 26 points to 18 victory over Whitehaven, London Broncos lost at home by 12 points to Lee Centurions' 38, the Bulls were beaten by Halifax 32 points to 24 at Odsall, and it was Batley Bulldogs 18, Dewsbury Rams 16. So that means that Bradford slip out of the top four, which now comprises Lee, London, Halifax and Batley. The bottom of the table sees things looking worse and worse for Workington, who are now 5 points adrift of Oldham, who are on 10 points themselves. The battle for the final relegation place continued between Sheffield and Whitehaven and the aforementioned Ruffians, who are on 12, 11 and 10 points respectively. But don't rule out Swinton and Dewsbury being drawn into the mire on 15 and 14 points apiece. Into Championship 1 then, London Scholars were beaten 10 points to 30 by Doncaster. It was Coventry Bears 14, Newcastle Thunder 32. The North Wales Crusaders lost at home against Toulouse by 32 points to 14 as well. Hemel Stags was soundly beaten 6 points to 60 by the Rochdale Hornets. York got a 56 points to 12 win over the Gloucestershire All Golds, and the South Wales Scorpions lost at home by 24 points to 36 against the Hunslet Hawks. Keighley narrowly defeated at Cougaland 32 points to 34 by the Barrow Raiders, which completed that round of fixtures. So that means that Toulouse maintain their 2-point lead over chasing York and Rochdale, whilst Barrow's win at Keighley sees them leapfrog the Cougars into 5th place on 17 points, just one behind 4th place Doncaster. The Scholars, however, continue to fly the flag for the division's southern teams, keeping 7th spot ahead of Hunslet, North Wales and Newcastle. At the foot of the table, Oxford, South Wales and Hemel are all locked on a paltry 2 points each. Okay, that is all your results from elsewhere in the world of rugby league taken care of. Apologies for not paying much attention to everything that was going on down under this week. I'm going to quickly bring you our predictions for the 20th round of Super League play. Okay, I've got literally a minute and 30 seconds before they're going to cut me off. So, Thursday night, we start with Huddersfield taking on Hull FC down at the John Smith Stadium. Not a chance for Huddersfield as far as I'm concerned. Misfiring and defeated against Wakefield Trinity. Hull FC guiding themselves through. Everything seems to be going well over at FC. I'm going for a 24 points to 12 win in favour of the visiting side. Friday sees Hull KR take on the Warrington Wolves over in East Hull. Despite Warrington's stuttering performance, they are going in on the back of a win. I'm going to go for a 30 points to 14 victory in favour of the Wolves. Salford take on Castleford at the same time on Friday night. This one's a bit tricky for me to call. I almost went for a Castleford win, but I think home field advantage is going to be key, and Salford on a Friday night with a bigger crowd anticipated should have enough to see off the Tigers. I'm going 24 points to 20 in favour of Cass. Saturday sees the Catalan Dragons take on the Wigan Warriors. Big celebrations down in the south of France as they celebrate 10 years as a Super League side. Sadly, I don't see the result going the same way as it did a decade ago. I'm plumping for a close one though. Wigan Warriors by a point, 21 points to 20. Sunday sees the final two fixtures of the weekend. Leeds Rhinos take on the Widnes Vikings. 3 wins out of 3 for Leeds at the moment. I think they're going to go strong into this final part of the season. And Wakefield take on St Helens at home. They're going to celebrate their victory in the Challenge Cup quarterfinals with a 20 points to 18 victory over a misfiring, albeit rested St Helens side. That's your Super League pod. I'll see you next time.